Hey guys, I wanted to welcome you to day 2 of YOUVEMBER. And in this video I want to talk about all of the books that I want to read until the end of the year. I should clarify that I am currently pre-filming, so it is October. It's September today, but it will be October tomorrow. So these include not videos. These include books that I want to read from October to December, but yes, this is going out November 2nd. So some of these books, by the time you see this video, I have maybe already read, but you will see that in different fall reading vlogs or just possibly in December when I do a wrap-up of all of the books that I read from October to December, or doing a video of all of the books I read throughout the whole entire year, depending on how I do it. So I just want to clarify before you ask, or if you don't ask but think that I'm insane including all of these books, I also may not read all of them. This is just an idea. They're all books that I want to read, and I'd like to read them in the next 3 months, but if I don't, that's okay, because I am a mood reader, so I read when I want and what I want, just based on how I'm feeling. And I do DNF. I like to often call them soft DNFs, where I will choose to put the book down and then I'm like, well, I'll go back to it eventually. Those soft DNFs that I've done, most of them I have not gone back to, but that doesn't mean that I will never go back to them. Also, if I'm looking down at the floor, it's because I have my computer down there, and when I'm explaining more of the things, I may have it in my lap, just letting you know. Also, I wanted to explain that some of them are themed, so like with holidays or seasons, and others are purely just for fun or just something I've been wanting to read. Anyway, here are all of the books that I want to read until the end of the year. Okay, to start, I have a few books that I got physically from the library. By a few, I mean 5, so kind of a lot, maybe not just a few. And some of them that I will later tell you that I may get from the library, but on Libby, I may have to get physically too. It depends on what I see when I actually go to get that book in the future. Okay. I'll try and go in the order of this, but if there's not a good explanation of the book, I may have to use my computer. The first book that I want to read, also, disclaimer, these are not in order, they're just in a random order of just all of the books I want to read or have on my TBR. The first book that I'm going to talk about is The Body Keeps the Score. I wanted to read this a while ago, but I did not end up reading it, I think because it wasn't physical, and I tend to do better with self-help books reading them in the physical version. This book is by Bessel van der Kolk, MD. Also want to apologize that I may not know how to say people's names. I should look it up, and I apologize that I do not. I'll put a big image of the book on the screen if you want to see, and maybe link them all. I'll figure that out. This basically talks, here I'll read the last sentence. Based on Dr. van der Kolk's own research and that of other leading specialists, The Body Keeps Its Score exposes the tremendous power of our relationships both to hurt and to heal, and offers new hope for reclaiming lives. So I want to read this book. The next book I have is Amelia If Only by Becky Albertalli. I have no clue if that's right. I'm just going to read the back of this because I don't want to read the whole explanation of what it is, just in case you want to go in more blind. But it says not quite a real crush. It's like a pre-crush, a seed. It's just this weird gut feeling I have that Walter and I could be something if only we could talk once for real. So, but what I've heard, it is actually not a, from what I could tell from reading more of it, it's not actually a love story between Walter and Amelia. I believe there's more to the story. Then the following book I have is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. Oh my. I'm just going to read a small tiny blurb, and if you want to learn more, I may leave full, links to the Goodreads page where I actually wrote a lot more, or that I planned on reading, but I'm realizing that if I read every single blurb on every single book, I'll be here forever, and I don't want to do that because I've talked enough today, and I'm sure you don't want to hear all of it. But it says Phantasma only has 2 rules: stay alive and don't fall in love. The don't was in italics, that's why I said it that way. And the lighting is being weird once again. Okay, the next book that I have physically from the library is The Beautiful by Renee Audier. I will put it on the screen. At once a sultry romance and a decadent thrilling mystery, master storyteller Renee Audier embarks on her most potent, there's like tape blocking the little blurb, so I'm struggling to read it. Renee embarks on her most potent fantasy series yet. I have heard quite a few things about this book, so I want to give it a try. And then the final book that I have physically at this moment from the library is How to ADHD, An Insider's Guide to Working with Your Brain, Not Against It by Jessica McCabe. I apologize if I did not read her name correctly. I should say that with all of them, but if I do, you'll get sick of it, and I will too. But I have not been formally diagnosed with ADHD, but I feel like even if I am not diagnosed, it could still be helpful because I have some of the symptoms of ADHD, and there are people in my family that do have ADHD, so I want to give it a read anyway. Let me rephrase. Those are all of the books that I plan on reading that I got physically from the library at this moment. Next, I believe I have all of the books that I plan on getting either digitally or have not gotten physically from the library yet. Okay, for the next few books, I'm gonna have my computer here, and I apologize for looking at it so much. It's just the only way that I think that I can explain all of this. So the next quite a few books that I have on my list I will be receiving from the library and most likely through the app Libby, and I will read them on my Kindle. The first one is I would really like to reread a book from my childhood. It is called Whatever After Fairest of All by Sarah Mlynowski. It is a fresh modern spin on a classic fairy tale. It is the first in a series, and given the fact that it's called Fairest of All, I am going to assume that it is a Snow White retelling, basically. The next one is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Sea of Monsters. It's book 2 of Percy Jackson by Rick Riordan. I also own the book physically. I think it's over here. So depending on how I'm feeling, I may choose to read it physically, or I may use my Kindle. I'm actually not going to read the description of this one because it is the second in a series and they are very connected. Another book that I want to read and I have on my list is Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I've read the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson and I really liked it. I don't think I finished it, but that was just because I was struggling with the space theme, so I kind of took a break from it and I have not gotten back yet, but I do plan on eventually going back. But I've heard Brandon Sanderson's fantasy series are amazing, so I want to give this one a chance. I am just going to read a tiny little blurb of this one, and it says, "What if the whole world were a dead, blasted wasteland?" And you can continue reading the description on Goodreads if you choose. The next book I have is, we're flying away from fantasy and we will get back to fiction books in a minute, or at least like books that are very different in a minute. But the next one is The 12-Week Year by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. I have started reading this one, but I have not finished it. I just kind of want to figure out how I want to plan for the next year, and this is one of the ways that I'm thinking about doing it. I'm already doing cyclic planning using my bullet journal, but I am wondering about like actually setting my goals on a cyclic plan, but also the 12-week year kind of does it differently. Basically, I'm just planning how to work on my planning for 2026, and this is one of the books that I am reading in order to plan it, if that makes sense. The following book is a book I've never read, but is often considered a classic. It is Pride and Prejudice. I completely forgot to write the author, and currently I'm blanking, so I apologize. It might be Jane Eyre, but is Jane Eyre a book? I apologize. It will be on the book cover, I bet. Another book that never mind, Jane Austen. I knew that. That's the author. And I'm not gonna read much about it because either you know it or you don't and you're going in blind like me. Another book that I'm wanting to read is People Watching by Hannah Bowman Young. I again did not write a single blurb about that one, so I apologize. All of these books will be linked to their Goodreads in the description of this video if you are curious about learning more about them. Another book that I want to read is the second one in, or I don't know if it's actually connected or if it is just a standalone, but this is the second book that I'm reading from the author Sambu Mandana, I believe. And the first one I read was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, but this one is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, and I just want to read the second one. I'm not going to read much about it because I don't know if they're connected or not, or if they're like the second in a series, so yeah. Lastly, through Libby, I want to read Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I believe that's how you say his name. It is a series, but one of my best friends and my roommate in college, one of my best friends / roommate in college read this book and fell in love with the whole series, so I want to give it a chance. She technically told me a lot about it, but I tend to prefer to go into books and movies and TV shows less blind. I don't mind being spoiled because I'll just read it and enjoy it anyways. I think that is possibly a thing that goes along with my anxiety, but that's okay. So, those are all of the books that I want to get through my library in some form, most likely through Libby and reading on my Kindle, but if not, they will be physically. Finally, I want to read a few books through Kindle Unlimited. I do realize this is a huge list. Again, I may not read them all. This is just the start. The first one I want to read is Chasing the Wild by Elliot Rose. I'm just going to read the first sentence that's here. What happens when you're snowed in on a mountain ranch with the one man you definitely should not be fantasizing about? The next book, which I think is actually going to be through my library, but I'm not sure, is Wayward by Amelia Hart. I believe, actually I'll read this part. Weaving together the stories of 3 extraordinary women across 5 centuries, Amelia Hart's Wayward is an enthralling novel of female resilience and the transformative power of the natural world. So I feel like that's a very good explanation of the book. The 3 time periods are 2019, 1619, and 1942. So, if that tells you anything. Next, I would like to read Face Off by Chelsea Curto. It is a hockey romance, and it's the first in a series, and that's about all I know about it. Another book that I want to read is Love Arranged by Lauren Asher. This is the 3rd book in the Lakefront Billionaires series, I believe, and I have read the previous 2, and I also read, what's the series before this? I'm not sure what the series was before this directly, but I also read her sports car romance series. And there might have been another one before this, but I've loved her writing. I've had a few that I haven't loved as much, but overall, they're like all 5-star romances to me. And by the way, I may not rate books based on how most people do. I rate them on enjoyment. If I enjoy something, most likely it's going to get a 4 or 5 star. And then the last book I have on my end of year TBR, we're finally towards the end. I apologize that this is probably a really long video, and depending on how you feel about books, it may be very boring. But the last book is On Guard by Kels? I don't know how to say this person's name, and I apologize. And Denise Stone. It is, again, this is in a series, so I'm actually not going to talk much about it, but I believe it is the 2nd book in the series. But I can read this part. The bad boy of professional fencing meets Hollywood's favorite good girl in this sexy sports romance set against the backdrop of a high-stakes blockbuster. Okay, that is finally all of the books that I have on my end of year TBR from October to December. I will most likely not read them all, but I always like to go big or go home. That's just kind of the way I am, and I often set too high of goals because I don't know how to limit myself to smaller things, especially when it comes to reading or doing something I enjoy. I tend to be like, I could do this many, and I don't take into account how much work I'm doing or how tired I will be by the time I actually get to read. So anyway, that was my extremely long list of books that I want to read. I hope you enjoyed it. I also want to say, please look up trigger warnings and age ranges if you need to, because I don't want anyone reading anything that they should not based on emotional trauma, trauma in general, or if they are too young to read a book, because that would not be great. But if you feel fine with everything in the trigger warnings, or just choose not to follow those guidelines, go for it, but do not blame me if you don't like a book, or it's too heavy, or you get in trouble by your parent. Also, I want to say this is not directly for children. I just wanted to clarify, just in case there are any children watching this, and children are below 18. That is the age range I am following. Anyway, that's a long ramble about that. I hope you enjoyed this video, and have an idea of what you'd like on your TBR or are just interested in what I have on my TBR. And I hope to see you in my next video and hope to see you tomorrow for the next video of YOUVEMBER. Bye!